Greetings and welcome to episode 21 of the Sustaining the Herd podcast, brought to you by Sechi Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm Andrew Wadle, and I'm joined in the studio with my co-host, Brock Vitek, as well as John Schroeder from Darr Feedlots of Cozad, Nebraska. Sustaining the Herd is a relatively new podcast, and Brock and I joke a lot about how we every episode has firsts associated with it. Well, this is indeed a first in that this is the first guest that has that we're having back as a part two. And so we're really glad to have John Schroeder from Darr Feedlots joining us. And John, how about introducing yourself again for the folks that haven't listened to part one, but we know they're going to.
So hello again, John Schroeder. I'm the general manager from Darr Feedlot in Cozad, Nebraska. We're a 48,000 head commercial feedlot that provides beef to consumers around the globe, and really proud of those consumers with smiles on their faces.
That's great. And, John, you and I were talking in the green room, so to speak, about how this episode of visiting with you, we were going to talk about things about innovation that you're up to there at Darr, but wanted to make a comparison back to, it might not be quite so innovation, but it's kind of the opposite of innovation. It's kind of like the way things used to be, but yet how important they are. And that is something as simple, but yet as important as cowboys. Can you just talk a little bit about what it's like to be the day-to-day of a modern cowboy and how important they are to your operation?
Well, I think the thing to understand is that the ask from our industry is quite an ask. We have cowboys that come in and ship cattle at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. We've got cowboys that might be shipping cattle anywhere from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. And again, we're asking cowboys to move cattle back and forth from pens and ride through pens every day and identify sick cattle, making good pulls. You've got to have the talent of having the horsemanship and the skill sets to make those pulls coming out of a pen, but you also got to have the eyes and ears and that sixth sense of when one doesn't look like it looked yesterday, and make that decision to get it out and take a look at it. And so it really takes incredible individuals to have that toughness and to do it in all kinds of weather that Mother Nature throws at us. I'm just telling you, cowboys deserve a lot of respect. They're incredible caretakers, and the effort and the skill set they have is top notch.
That's great, John. I'd like to zoom out for a moment as we talk about innovation and sustainability in the feedlot industry, and ask what does it mean to you for a beef cattle feedlot to be both innovative and sustainable in today's world?
Well, I think it might be easier to be innovative than it is to be sustainable. Sustainable means you got to take some innovative chances and still make it. To be sustainable means you've got to continue that on. It means you've got to be profitable. It means you have to get along with the community. It means that you've had to do the right things and build a trust factor that the product you're producing, that somebody still wants it and is willing to pay a premium to have you come back. And so, and then make sure that the resources that you're using in a community are there for the next generations to utilize again. So sustainability really comes into that platform. I think the innovation side is how do we really utilize some of the new technologies to get those things accomplished more efficiently, which keeps us profitable. And again, how do we go ahead and do that in a manner that keeps both cattle and employees comfortable? Because again, they've each have got to deliver a top response the next day as well. So I think those are some of the things we look at, and we try a lot of things more kind of just on in our minds, we have to have an R&D budget that we know there's some things we're going to try that don't work. And if we keep trying and being on the edge on with 1,000 head on something that we try something with and it doesn't work, it's 1,000 head. It's not all 108,000 head that we're going to market in a year. And so I think you got to have a percentage in mind that you're willing to fail on, and because you're going to fail with some of this new innovations. But the key is if you can find those that add some value. And really, when I analyze that R&D standpoint, the first step, it's got to actually scientifically work. I mean, it's got to have some efficacy. The second thing is you've got to be able to have employees adopt it. So you've got to have some buy-in that your employees can actually use that technology. Sometimes that's a software platform. Sometimes that's an ease of use. And then the last thing is it's actually got to be profitable. It has to have a return on investment. And so if you can get those three things done, you're going to go from using it on 1,000 head to using it on over 100,000 head in a year's time. And so that's really kind of how that works. And so as we try to be innovative, that's what we're really looking for, is trying some of those things that we think add some value and have potential, knowing that there's quite a few of them we're going to fail on, but the ones that we can have some success with can continue to add value to the industry and to our operations.
So can you give us some idea of some new technologies that you're investigating, some things that you think have a heartbeat that you'd like to learn more about?
I think there's things when it comes to devices that are helping us identify when cattle are healthy and when cattle are sick, and being able to identify those things faster. So we see that quite a bit of that with some of the electronic tags that we're dabbling and playing with. Some that are measuring movement and temperature, that we can wake up and come into work and turn our computer on and have a list of cattle that really are showing on the algorithm that these there's something different with these than what's going on in the rest of the pen. And we can flip the light switch on and light the tags up, so when we go out into the pen, you can see them blinking and you can go pull them. And it's another tool to help you get more timely and run through that. Now, you still need to have your head on your shoulders, and we've talked about it before. You got to have that duh factor. Duh, that one's not blinking, but it still don't look very good. I want to pull that one too. But I think what you're finding is that it's an awful good tool to help you really hit the highlights of where you need to spend more time on a pen that's got more things going on. So I think that's really a neat opportunity to have something like that not only helps you identify them, but also on those days where you're really busy and you can't get everything done, but it really helps you prioritize where you need to spend your time the best. So I think sometimes that's as much help as anything. So I think the other part is, from a consumer standpoint, boy, isn't that cool that we can, tell you how we've managed and taken care of those cattle. It's quite a footprint that we're working with. I think the other one that we've dabbled in and found that it scientifically works, but just haven't found a way to put a return on investment is a breath machine through Isomark, where we've taken breath samples on cattle for 8 seconds and basically a carbon 12, carbon 13 ratio. That delta is telling us whether there's infection present in those animals in the last hour and a half. And with multiple breath samples, you can tell whether that's going from a state of health to a state of disease, or if it's a state of disease back to a state of health. I think that's one to continue to watch. It's one that we've spent some time with, not chasing after more right now, but I think as dynamics change in this industry is one that we haven't given up on yet either. So I think there's just some pretty neat things that come that way. The other side of things, when we've got fly pressure and we're trying to make sure cattle stay comfortable in the heat of the summer, we're wanting to put plenty of water out and keep cattle hydrated. but we also want to keep them comfortable, not fighting flies. And so one thing we do is we put out a stingless wasp. Again, you've got researchers that are finding out what genetics of the stingless wasp eat the fly larvae before they hatch. And isn't that a cool deal that we're not having to use pesticides to kill things off? We're actually putting out a stingless wasp that doesn't reproduce but eats that fly larva before it hatches. And you can see those cattle; they aren't even switching their tails because there's no flies that are bothering them. And you're winning the battle. It's going into some pretty hot summer days, and if you got plenty of water in front of them and they're not fighting flies, you're going to keep those cattle comfortable throughout the day. But if they start swatting their tails, you're behind, and you better step up your management programs to keep them comfortable. And so again, some of those things are pretty simple, but have been very effective. So again, I think those are pretty cool technologies that some have been implemented and some are still in the process.
John, did you ever think when you were a young dabbling cattleman, you'd be talking about light up ID tags and breath sampling and stingless wasps?
That wasn't stuff that was on our radar at the time. And I think the things that we're going to probably spend the most time on, and we've dabbled in DNA, and we've sorted some cattle by DNA only, and been pretty impressed with some of the opportunities there. I think there's opportunities identifying respiratory resistant genetics. There's definitely opportunities in identifying genetics that handle different management styles. And so we're going to spend a lot of time in that realm in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's great, John. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and ask, what are some recent projects that you've completed in your operation that might be on the innovative side of things, with one specifically being your new processing barn that I know you're very proud of? I'd like to maybe highlight that one as well.
Well, I tell you what, it's been great to have partners with Setchi's and helping look at other designs, other places of where we've had facilities. We've learned a lot from our own mistakes and our own things that have worked over the last 42 years. And so the first thing we look at is in-house, what's worked for us, and what do we see that there's opportunities to improve existing facilities. And we've got a 1988 processing barn that still processed cattle. We've got employees that have done a nice job of keeping it clean, but we really find that in 1988 we weren't trying to re-implant 1,300-pound cattle. And some people say, well, why do you want to try to re-implant something weighing 1,300 pounds? And my answer is because I want to make them 1,700 pounds. And so it's with that, we've really needed to have facilities that could process 400-pound calves and process cattle that maybe even 2,500-pound bulls. And so having that ability to really have adaptive facilities that can handle all types of cattle in a safe handling area has been key. And we've really honed in on bud boxes. That's what we've really trained, and we continue to do that horseback, and that's worked really well for us, not only in our processing barns but also our loadouts. And so we've went from the days of Temple Grandin and these more sweeping tub gates, and we've had some that have worked really well for us. But we really like these bud boxes and how cattle naturally flow and want to come back where they've come from. And so that's been something that has been really good. We've worked with the Setchi team to look at some other facilities from some of our competitors. And when we built a new facility back in 2007, we've had a number of people look at that facility, and it's been really interesting to go back and see some of the people that have built barns after they looked at that facility. What changes did they make? And there's some ideas to borrow. And again, I think that's always important, to be open to to share some ideas back and forth with some of our competition. And that's what's great about our feedlot industry. You get that opportunity. But we've really built a nice processing facility, radiant heat floors for this winter weather, making sure that we've got a very functional bud box into a Daniels double alleyway, single alley, and we really like the silencer chutes that we come out with. And we use an animat out front to really make sure that we don't have toe abscesses as they're coming out. And we're sorting hydraulically with hydraulic gates 7 different ways. And the part that's changed, especially as we start talking about that DNA piece, think about this. We're scanning an electronic tag, and we've really got 9 different types of attributes we might be trying to collect at the chute. And so we want to, the past, we only had about 4 ways that we were collecting that. Today, we're able to collect those 9 different fields. And we may want to sort in different ways based off of some of those characteristics. But we're scanning an electronic tag. We've got fiber buried into our processing facility where we can go up to the cloud, see what that EID tag matches up to DNA, bring it back down into our algorithm and say it's sorted this way or that way, and do that in less than a second. And I think that's important when you think about, as we're building these processing barns of the futures. In 1988, you didn't think we were going to be doing those types of things. And there'll be things we're doing in the next 15, 20, 30 years that this facility needs to be ready for. And so those are the types of things we want to make sure are available to integrate in and add as we find more technology. I think on the loadout facility, we really want to make sure that we're dealing with trucks that can handle different load amounts when we're loading that top and that belly and back. And we've got both high frequency and low frequency EID readers there, so we can tell exactly which cattle we're putting in what compartment of the truck. And again, we have the opportunity to learn: are we getting some bruising? Are we getting some loin bruising in different compartments? Are there opportunities to take care of any issues that we might see when we're loading cattle and getting feedback from our packing friends? So I think that's important to have that kind of innovation and technology. And we thought about those types of things as we developed these new facilities, and again, got a nice execution with that Sechi team working with us.
John, we know that you've done a number of things on the innovative side involving your crop production. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? So
on the crop side, we were right here in the Platte River Valley, and it was Cozad's mascots, the haymakers, and so used to be just a valley full of old alfalfa dehy plants, and we've lost quite a few of those, and down to the last remaining ones that are more in specialized areas. But we don't use those alfalfa dehy pellets like they used to years ago. And so when I first came, we were using about 2,500 tons of silage, and in the last few years we're closer to 90,000 tons of silage. So as we're harvesting, 3,000 to 35,000 to 3,500 acres of silage and putting that up in 8 days or less, it's really important to think about. We look at that and say, hey, as we do that, we're taking all of that cover off the ground. We really wanted to have some residue and some cover back when we first started. So we initially started putting some cover crops down just so that we could keep the ground from blowing. And we felt like that was the responsible thing to do. As we did that, we recognized that, hey, there's quite a bit of this that comes up in the fall of the year. And if we plant this right behind the silage cutter, we've really got quite an opportunity to grow quite a bit of forage and an opportunity to graze that. And so we went to utilizing some of those cover crops more as opportunities to graze some of these younger cattle. And then after a few years, we've recognized that, hey, we're able to build APH on these soils. We're getting yields on these fields, cutting silage, year after year, and we're getting better yields than what we were with a rotation into soybeans. We really learned that we could get away not having to have a soybean rotation in that because we were utilizing those cover crops. And so along with that, we found that there's different cocktails of oats and wheat and triticale and turnips and radishes. Planted some camelina this year for the first time. It's not the Catalina wine mixer; it's the camelina wine mixer this fall, and it's been a lot of fun to try some of those different cocktails that accomplish different things. When we've seen some soils that have hardened up, we've really had an opportunity with some of those turnips and radishes to break up those soils and tackle some of those compaction issues. And so it's been a lot of fun to work with farmers in that area. And as we found some end consumers that were interested in the advantages of some of these soil health programs, it's been nice to have some partnerships. And it surprised us maybe in our neighborhood that anybody cared. But there's been some pretty good funds that have been available to try some of those different things, and so we've partnered with some people to try to get some dollars available for farmers to try different things that they haven't been comfortable in doing in the past. And some of those things, again, from an innovation standpoint, that may not make money the first time, but you need some dollars to try some things in case you fail. And so, and to press where that comfort level is. And so, a year ago, we influenced about 9,600 acres, and this year we influenced close to 18,000 acres of cover crops. So it just shows involvement in the community of trying some things. And again, sometimes there's some successful pieces of that, and sometimes there's some spots when Mother Nature doesn't give us any rain. You get some spots where it doesn't work, especially in some of those dryland scenarios where we've got irrigation and the ability to utilize some of that. We've had quite a bit of success, especially with some time in the fall of the year. And so I think that's been pretty impressive. We brought in some help at trying to understand that. Aaron Hurd is here in Nebraska and comes and does a great job of showing a water simulation of what some of these soils look like, and some of the no-till practices that have been implemented for the last 20 years in some of these fields shine and look really good. We looked at some of these really heavily tilled fields that don't perform quite as well, and we looked at, hey, here's what some of these cover crop fields and what these soil types look like as we add water, and how much of that water is infiltrating, how much of it is running off. And you can see how dirty that water that's running off of some of those heavily tilled acres without much soil structure, and some of these really healthy soils with a ton of worms running around in them. It's amazing how that water is just filtrating down really clear and clean. And so it's a nice demonstration of what we're getting accomplished. And so I think as you've got different parts of the country that are having concern with water quality, with the runoff deals, the responsible thing to do is managing these soils to where they keep producing and having those attributes and that really bring great yields and set them up for future generations to have success. And then at the same time, we want to make sure that water quality is great for us to drink and utilize the livestock, use as a community. And so I think those are all important things that we're accomplishing when we dive into some of those soil health conversations. I think that we can go overboard with some of those things sometimes. And so I think you've got to dial that back and say, what are we really trying to accomplish? I feel like we're seeing some of these sustainability conversations getting pulled back in a little bit. And I think you're seeing a lot of corporations this last year say, well, is this greenhouse gas emissions is as hot a topic as it was a year ago? No, I think in this next administration it gets dialed back a little bit, and that's okay. But I think there's still important things when it comes to having clean water and having resources we can pass to the next generation that definitely have a benefit. And that's really where we put our focus to start with. But we've also, found some ourselves involved in some conversations with people that we normally wouldn't have a lot of conversations with. But it's we really are accomplishing that same thing by having a resource that we can utilize in future generations. I think that's really the important piece. And I grew up sustainability in my era was really called stewardship, and that's really what we're continued to be as good stewards of the ground.
Yep, and that's really important because the clean air and the clean water, in addition to the food you're producing, it's our connection to society, and at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. That is a healthful food, clean air, and clean water. So, as another matter of programming note, I'd mentioned when I let in that we have many firsts. Well, John, that was a first where someone referenced the movie Step Brothers in an episode. So it was not lost. It was not lost on me, and I'm sure a number of the rest of our listeners as well. So thank you for that. So when we concluded our last episode, and even when we led into this episode, we talked about labor and people at Darr Feedlots. It was labor in general or cowboys. So labor is part of a sustainable operation. What does labor sustainability mean to you? How do you maintain a sustainable labor force?
Well, I think that's a constantly changing issue every year. I think back a few years ago, North Carolina was running for the national championship in basketball. They were playing for that championship and got second that year. But they came back the next year with the exact same players, and they didn't even make the tournament the following year. And so I think it shows you, even when you've got the same exact team members that come back the next year, if you don't show up engaged and working as a team, you might not be effective. So I think when it comes to employees, it's not always about the change. It's about keeping the people that you have working for you engaged and keeping yourself engaged. So I think there's some things that happen that can get you off kilter. And so I think anytime you have an employee that's worrying about their financial health, worrying about their medical health, the health of themselves or their loved ones, they're not going to come to work engaged as well as they would if those issues weren't front and center in their mind. And so I think it's really important that you pay competitive wages. I think that it's important that you have health plans that are effective for your employees so that they come to work knowing that they've got good insurance, that they're going to get taken care of and financially not going to go to ruin. And it's not only just that employee, it's their family too. So I think that's a mindset that, prior to Obamacare, we were getting that done with downtown Main Street insurance agents. And it might have been the same Blue Cross Blue Shield program, but you really had an opportunity to work with 20 different agents that knew how to service that account. Since that time frame, it's tripled in cost of what it's taken us to supply that for families of five. And it's now coming out of Minneapolis from somebody that doesn't know anybody here. And so that resource, that local resource for employees, that's really a disadvantage. But I think those are challenges. You've got to find ways that you can get some of those conversations that people come in. We had a health fair where we had health officials come in and go ahead and do a free look at each employee if they wanted to participate and get that information back. As a feed yard, we didn't get that information individually about them. It's just a benefit for them to have a one-on-one conversation with some healthcare providers and have a free look at where they're at with a lot of things. I think it's important to lay that out and have those concerns. So those benefits are important. But then I think the bigger thing from a feedlot standpoint to get engagement is to have a consistent ask. Ask what's expected, what's the ideal in this job that we're trying to do, why are we trying to do this, so we get that understanding, and then have some meaningful follow-up. I think it's important that you follow up and give positive or constructive criticism if it's not to the level that you want. I think that holding that standard is the toughest thing every day. It's a simple thing, but one of my pet peeves is gates that aren't shut. Either they're open or they're shut. And if they're hanging in between, somebody hasn't done a very simple thing very effectively. And I think those are just little things that you got to have pride in and hold that standard. But then the bigger things, when you're taking care of cattle and taking care of the maintenance of a feedlot, it takes really sharp individuals that are really good operators of equipment, that have a good feel of what that equipment will do when it's running properly, and if it's not running properly, can hear it, can feel it, and know to stop and ask questions. Hey, this doesn't feel right. What do we need to do? I like those individuals that do ask some questions. And I call it the duh factor. Duh, this don't feel right. Let's figure something out. But then another part of that is really making sure that they're every day following that maintenance requirement of following up and greasing equipment, making sure things are washed up and ready to go for the next day. And I think as we find individuals that have those skill sets, we used to grow them. We used to have a ton of these farm kids, and we just don't have those kinds of farm kids that we grew up with 30 years ago. And some of that's because we haven't allowed them to work. We've got wonderful youth that have been educated better than maybe any generation, but it doesn't make any difference unless you get up and bring it every day. And we have to give them opportunities. One of the challenges that I have is can we bring high schoolers in to start to learn about our industry? It's fun to work. I mean, my dad always said, "What do you guys do for fun?" We work for fun, and I think that's part of it. And if you don't get that opportunity to work and have fun doing it and take that pride, by the time you're 18 and you haven't had that opportunity, it takes a little longer to train that up and to build that self-confidence and in that equipment. So I think you've got to kind of have baby steps at bringing in people that haven't run a lot of equipment, and that's okay. We can start them from scratch, but they've got to have that curiosity and that interest in order to get to that level. So as we look at education systems, I really like these 2-year tech schools. Very impressed with what's getting kicked out of those programs. You've really got technical skill sets when they come out of some of those programs. I think our land grant universities need to keep thinking about some of that, that we have not only technical skill sets that come with that, but then as we manage people, that's really a coaching thing. We really need to understand, and get more experiences and more reps of, if you got a 3-man job, something that takes 3 people to do. One thing I've always enjoyed seeing is when you put one person in charge of the other 2 people, and at the end of the day, he's not been a real nice person to the other 2. And the next day, what I really love to do is to have one of those other two be in charge the next day and see how that turns around. And so I think, understanding, treat people like you want to be treated. And I really like working managers, those people that work uh, with their people and hold that standard to a high level. That's what we're blessed with at Darr. We've got some incredible working managers that work with their people, and the people aren't working for somebody; they're working with them. And I think that's an important thing. And we've got a duty to make sure that that they're successful individuals in the community, and that we invest in their interests and the interest of their families. So I think that's kind of how I would look at some of the sustainability with people in the community. Now we don't always have, we've got 1.6% unemployment in Nebraska, so we've got to immigrate some people from somewhere, out of state, out of country. Somebody's got to, get recruited to move into these local communities where, and we've got a lot to offer. And so I think we've got to showcase that, and I think we've got to be open to having that diverse culture. And we've been blessed here in central Nebraska to have a lot of diversity, and we've been blessed to have some people that have immigrated to this country that have really have done well. And I think the one thing that I'd say with that, I had a great great grandmother that came from Germany through Ellis Island, and she just had a tag around her neck and had directions to get back to Tulare, South Dakota. And she'd give a little bit of money and didn't know how to speak any English at all, but got to Tulare, South Dakota. And even as a young man, I never heard her speak very much English, and so it's not about that change and that adaptation of the first generation. It's about the generation that we're educating. It's about those kids that go to our school systems and educate and really become that part of our fabric of society. And as we see different people coming in and being positive contributors to society, it's not about them changing to our culture. It's about their kids getting that American dream. And it's so fun to see people have those kids that are the first generation to get to go to college. That pride that comes from that, it's still fun to see. And I think that's something to keep in mind. And so I think there's opportunities for us to keep, working and partnering with people to continue next generations that want to be involved in this business. And so I'm excited to see meaningful immigration reform to where we've got access to the people that with skill sets that want to be part of that American dream of passing that on to next generations.
Well, John, that was all very well said, and I think it's summed up by your slogan or your motto at Darr Feedlot that you shared, that cattle are the business and people make the difference. That's exactly what you just shared there. I would like to say thank you once again for joining us for an episode of Sustaining the Herd. We really appreciate all of your time and expertise and experiences that you've shared with us, both in the most recent episode, part 1, and now here in part 2. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to spend some time with you on the show here.
Well, thanks again. And, just remember, as some of us cattle feeders are buying feeders and you're questioning our math skill sets, just remember that 5 out of 4 cattle feeders aren't very good at math.
There you go. I'm surprised you didn't sneak in a Go Jackrabbits or something there too.
Well, we probably would have said boo bison, but they are legitimate winners last night. So
there you go.
Well, thank you, John.
Well, John, yeah, thanks again. And to all of our listeners, thank you once again, as always, for choosing to spend some time with us and join us for an episode of Sustaining the Herd. We look forward to being back with you once again in a couple of weeks. Until then, thanks for joining the herd.